minutes. Bless you.
Well, good
somebody.
morning.
And
Welcome
then we will open it up
UN
to
Week
you,
here in New York and here at the Council on Foreign Relations.
And we are honored and thrilled to begin it with Prime Minister Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. He has been Prime Minister for just over a year. Prior to that, he was a member of the National Assembly. Before politics, he served as UNICEF's Special Representative for Sports. Had a small career in the world of sports, where he is widely recognized as one of the great cricket players in history and led Pakistan's national team to victory at the World Cup. A lot of other things. He was at Oxford in the early and mid 1970s, along with others, Tony Blair, Benazir Bhutto, and quite a few other distinguished people who went on to have extraordinary careers. The way we're going to do it is the Prime Minister and I will have a conversation for a few minutes. Bless you, somebody. And then we will open it up to you, to the members for questions. Prime Minister also, I should say, has a packed schedule. So we are going to try to end this so he can brave the traffic by just under an hour from now. Ask you to remain seated when he goes. I can't resist, so one question. First of all, again, thank you and welcome, sir. One question about your previous life. Is there anything that you took from your previous life of cricket that has served you well in the world of politics that you now find yourself?
Well, Richard, thank you very much first for inviting me here, giving me an opportunity to talk about my country. Cricket, like any sport, I think it teaches you the most invaluable lesson of life. And basically that is that whenever you are aiming at some goal in life, it teaches you how to struggle, the ability to take the bad times, the setbacks. So the quality of success is not how you handle the good times, it's how you handle the bad times and how you cope with them, how you learn from the setbacks, not get demoralized. So that's the only way I could struggle for 22 years before I got into this position.
Well, speaking of struggle, let's talk about your economy for a minute, if we may. Over the years, I believe Pakistan and the International Monetary Fund have reached more than a dozen agreements. You just reached one rather recently, I think on the scale of $6 billion. You yourself, when you ran for this job, you were critical of it, yet you've now entered into it. Why is Pakistan having such difficulty economically that it has to repeatedly turn to the IMF?
You see, it's the moment you have a deficit, whether it is current account or fiscal deficit, means you're not managing your economy properly, and it's just like a household. If the house is going into a deficit, you have to raise your income, cut your expenditure. So this inability of successful governments to manage our economy is why we keep landing up with the IMF. We inherited, unfortunately, the biggest current account deficit in Pakistan's history. And so the first year has been a real struggle to basically fix this deficit. And I'm very proud to say that we have really cut down this deficit almost by 70%. We now have an economy which is heading in the right direction. Simple reason was that previously we had a 5% growth rate, but that was based on imports. This time what we are doing is restructuring the economy so that it's an export-based growth rate, which is really how an economy goes up. So that has been the main reason why we had to go to the IMF, because we had this huge current account deficit.
Also wanted to talk about your relationship with China. Pakistan is on the short list of the countries that receives the most Belt and Road investment from China. So there's really, two questions flow from it. Won't this dramatically exacerbate your debt challenge, given the nature of Chinese support? And how does Pakistan make the claim that it's going to retain its full sovereignty, given that it's allowing or inviting China in to do projects on such a scale?
First, let me just say that the situation which we found ourselves in when 13 months ago we came into power was probably the worst economic situation. And so China really helped us when we were right at the rock bottom. They helped us, supported our, by giving us funds for our foreign exchange reserves, very important at that time. In fact, we were staring at a default. So China helped us along with Saudi Arabia and UAE to beef up our reserves. And what China offers us right now as an opportunity, they have a $2 trillion import market. And so China has given us a preferential trade agreement where we can export to China at the same terms as the ASEAN countries. So this is a great opportunity. Apart from that, we have this opportunity now to get Chinese industry to relocate in Pakistan, bring in technology. So China has given us a great opportunity to lift ourselves up from where we are right now.
I want to talk, and I want to try to cover a lot of different subjects before we turn to the members here. They asked the tough questions, by the way. I'm here to lull you into a sense of complacency. I want to talk about U.S.-Pakistani relations. In full disclosure, I've been involved with them many times in the U.S. Government, and each side has something of a narrative of frustration, even bitterness, or with the other. But I want to quote a sentence or two from the memoir of Jim Mattis. James, until recently, was the U.S. Secretary of Defense. And I'm quoting here. "Of all the countries I've dealt with, I consider Pakistan to be the most dangerous because of the radicalization of its society and the availability of nuclear weapons." James Mattis is a respected, temperate man. So when you hear someone like that writing those words, what is your reaction?
Just that I do not think James Mattis fully understands why Pakistan became radicalized. There's just a short history which everyone may or may not know. In 1980s, when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, Pakistan, along with the United States, helped by the United States, we organized the resistance to the Soviets. And the resistance was organized by Pakistani ISI training these militants who were invited from all over the Muslim world to do jihad against the Soviet Union. And so we created these militant groups to fight the Soviets. Then, of course, fighting the Soviets, jihad was glorified. And I never forget when Ronald Reagan invited the Mujahideen leaders to Washington, and he said they reminded him, and I quote, "the moral equivalence of the founding fathers of the United States." So jihad was, jihadis were heroes then. Come 1989, Soviets leave Afghanistan. The United States packs up and leaves Pakistan with a lot of those who would have reminded Ronald Reagan of the moral equivalence of founding fathers, and we were left with these groups. And then comes 9/11, and Pakistan again joined the US in the war on terror, and now we are hard. But I said we had first trained these guys to fight jihad, and it was a great idea, and now we are telling the same groups it's terrorism. So we should at least have stayed neutral. Pakistan, by joining the US after 9/11, committed one of the biggest blunders. 70,000 Pakistanis died in this. We had, some say over 150 billion, some say 200 billion, some economists, Pakistanis, 200. The lessons learned now, I think the Pakistan government should not have pledged what they could not deliver. How could they deliver? There were insider attacks in the Pakistan army. the groups that were close to the Pakistan army, the army was these.
Responsible for our difficulties in Afghanistan because Pakistan continues to accord sanctuary, provide sanctuary to the Taliban. And even if you can't always succeed against radicals who are on your territory, it seems to me it's totally legitimate for the United States to expect 100% effort. And at times we have argued and we would argue that the effort is anything but 100%.
You know, look, here was someone who kept saying that there's never going to be a military solution in Afghanistan. I kept telling Pakistan government whenever I had a chance. I came here in 2008. President Obama had not taken office. I spoke to senior Democrats. I told them that there will never be a military solution in Afghanistan simply because I have read the history of Afghanistan. You just have to read the history. They fight each other. The moment a foreigner comes through, they all get together and the resistance starts. Started with the British, 3 times the British tried. The Soviets killed 1 million Afghans. There was still, the resistance was stronger after 1 million Afghans had been killed. So I kept trying to tell this. I tried to explain to, I remember meeting Joe Biden, John Kerry, Harry Reid. I tried to explain, and I realized they hadn't a clue. No one understood Afghanistan. The politicians didn't understand what was going on. And this madness kept going on, and Pakistan kept being blamed. Now, Pakistan had 2 right now, but it had even more. We have 2.7 million Afghan refugees in Pakistan. There are camps of 500,000 refugees living there. How do we know who's coming in and going out? Clearly, this was not from Pakistan, the idea that there were these insurgents going from Pakistan. How are we? First of all, the tribal area bordering Afghanistan, there is no border there. The Durand line is a line made by the British, which there is no border there. Now we are fencing the border. Because of the allegations that fighters are going from Pakistan, we are fencing the border. We've also time and time said that, look, if you want Pakistan to completely stop anyone going across, then, take the refugees back, 2.7 million people. But it's not possible that, that 2.7 million refugees there and expect Pakistan to completely shut the border. Having said that, I do not think that it's because of Pakistan the US has not been able to succeed in Afghanistan, simply because there is a history behind it. It was never going to happen. And fortunately, President Trump has done, by him forcing there to be a dialogue, and then this peace deal, which was just about to be signed. This is painful for us. The peace deal was about to be signed, and President Trump has, we read it in the papers. I mean, we should have at least been discussed with us. But now I'm meeting President Trump later on, and I will try and tell him that, look, there's not going to be a military solution. For 19 years, if you have not been able to succeed, you're not going to be able to succeed in another 19 years.
I actually agree with you that there can't be a military solution. What I doubt is that there could be a peace deal that holds. So even if there were an agreement with the Taliban, what is there about the DNA of the Taliban that leads you to believe that any peace they would sign would be anything more than tactical?
I feel that this is not the Taliban which was there when in 2001, who was displaced by the US. Things have changed. They say that you only cross the river once. This is realities have changed. They have learned. Taliban realized that they cannot control whole of Afghanistan. The Afghan government knows that they cannot, there needs to be some sort of a peace deal. There has to be a political settlement. Let's just face it. You only have 2 choices. Either you fight or you have some sort of a political settlement. There's no point in fighting anymore. I wish that this deal had been signed, there would have been ceasefire, and then we would have proceeded towards the only way there's going to be, the US is going to eventually take the troops out and there'll be peace there. So I agree with you, Richard. It's going to be tough. I never for 1 minute assumed that this is going to be easy, but it is the only way.
Actually, I actually think there is a slightly different way, which is one idea is we would fight for military victory. I agree with you. That's not within reach. I am profoundly skeptical of a peace agreement. The third approach, for as long as it takes, is to support the government and basically preserve what you can in Afghanistan so it can't again become a basis for terrorist attacks. It's not a solution, but the United States has kept forces in other countries for more than half a century. We have supported governments. It's not a solution, but it might be preferable to a situation of Taliban control over the country.
I don't think Taliban will be able to control the whole country. I think there will be a settlement. Look, people of Afghanistan have suffered for 40 years. I mean, it is inhuman what they're going through. Anyone with any humane feelings would want there to be peace there. Every day there are bomb blasts going and people dying. So anything to actually stop this, again, Richard, I agree with you that after the 17 years of bloodshed and the way things have gone, I agree that it's not going to be easy. But I also don't think that if we go the other way, it'll be just more of the same. If Taliban today are stronger than they were for, maybe in 2010, when the last time there was chance of peace talks, when Holbrooke was there, they're much stronger than that now. And when they see that the US is about to leave, their morale is up.
Exactly. Which is why some of us are skeptical. But
no, so what I mean is that military is not the solution. If they're now feeling stronger than before, they're not going to be able to give up if you kill or bomb more of them.
I'm going to move on, but thank you. I think it's an important exchange. Osama bin Laden, when he was found and killed by American troops, he was just outside of your capital. Has there ever been a Pakistani investigation, a government investigation, as to how that could have happened? That he could have been living there for so long?
There has been an investigation, but I don't know whether as far as I know, the Abbottabad commission sat down, and I don't know what the conclusion was. But I can tell you one thing. You see, I again go back. The Pakistani army, ISI, trained Al-Qaeda and all these groups to fight in Afghanistan. There were always links between there had to be links because they trained them. Now, as I said, after 9/11, when we did a 180-degree turn and went after those groups, not everyone agreed with us. But in the army, people didn't agree with us. And so, as I said, there were more insider attacks in Pakistan. General Musharraf, there were 2 attacks on him, suicide attacks on him, which were insider from within the army. So people, so as far as I know, and I think there was a statement by President Obama that Pakistan military, the army chief, the ISI chief, had no idea about this. Because I think they were listening, to the conversation the night the raid took place. And they said so. So if there was, it was probably at lower levels who already had contacts.
I actually wanted to follow up on something, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but in the modern history of Pakistan, I would say most outsiders, when they look at the prime minister as a position, and they look at the strength of the chief of staff of the army and the head of the ISI, the intelligence directorate, they would say the preponderance of power is in the hands of the other 2 individuals, the head of the army and the head of intelligence. Is that a fair characterization? So do you really feel limited in what you can do as prime minister?
Look, in any democracy or any form of government, democracies function because of moral authority. If democracies lose their moral authority, then the physical strength and authority lies with the army. in our country, because space was given due to a lack of moral authority, because of corrupt governments, the army, naturally, there's no vacuum, so it moved in. I can tell you that since I have been 13 months in power, every policy of mine is in our manifesto. We wanted peace with all our neighbors. We opened the Kartarpur corridor, opening up. Normally, this would have had security implications. Our security forces would have resisted. Our policy with Afghanistan, which we reached out immediately to Afghanistan, to President Ghani. I have invited him to Pakistan. We speak regularly if there's any issue. Every policy of my government, which was peace with our neighbors, has been backed by the Pakistan army. I'll even go further. The only time the Pakistan army has cut its military budget is when my government started an austerity campaign and they followed, and they actually took a cut in their military spending. It's never happened before. I can tell you that all policies of my government have been completely backed by the army. When I spoke to Mr. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, I told him, I said, look, my country stands with me because we want peace. We have decided, we have a new policy with Afghanistan, with India. We want a new beginning. You take one step towards us, we come towards you. And he sort of said, are you sure? Meaning that is the army behind? The army completely stands with us, with our policies. So in past, it may be true, and I repeat, it's because governments lose. When democratic governments don't have militant wings, they have only moral authority, and that's much more powerful than physical authority.
Just two more questions for me. Since you raised India, I wanted to get to it. It may have been your hope to have improved relations with India. Needless to say, it hasn't worked out